For me, the analogy that I use is I envision this balloon with a string that I'm going to let it go and I'm going to give it to God. But really, it's a really long string that I'll just give him little inch by inch by inch until I'm still hanging on to it, and when I want to, I'll take it back over. I grew up in a Christian family, and so for me, we went to church, we served in church, and that was our family lifestyle. That's what we did. I was saved at a very young age, and I didn't really take my walk seriously or make it my own until I was a teenager. But up until that time, I had piggybacked off of my parents. I trusted my parents to trust the Lord, you see. So at 13, I decided that I would be baptized, and I was baptized in front of the church, in front of my friends, and in front of my family. And I gotta tell you, coming up out of the water after being baptized was the most joyful moment I had ever experienced. It was just so much happiness, and to have my friends and family members and church members there to encourage me and celebrate with me, it was the perfect, most joyful moment ever. And it was perfect, and I lived happily ever after. The end. Or so that's what I'd like to tell you. But actually, that's where my story begins. For me, yeah, I was born and raised in the church, but I didn't really have an understanding. I was young in my faith. I didn't understand the word completely. I just didn't realize what it would mean that I would have to surrender all, that I would have to give my life to Christ, that I would have to pick up my cross and follow him. So, less than a month after being baptized, I'm on this road trip with my family, and we're going to Kansas in the hot of the summer, and I let myself get extremely dehydrated on this trip, which caused some heat exhaustion. And by the end of that trip, I was sick, I was tired, and we camped out in this little hot RV, and I lost it. I completely lost it, and I had my first panic attack. And it's really hard to describe, but I just felt like every breath I took was literally killing me. And the walls of that RV were just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It felt like somebody was on the outside of that camper crushing it like a soda can. And it was the most fear I had ever experienced. And yeah, my parents were there, but I couldn't feel their comfort. For the first time in my life, I could not feel their protection over me. And I couldn't protect myself, I couldn't comfort myself. And so just all of this fear consumed me, all of the what ifs of what could happen, what was out of my control, and just one thought led to the next that completely consumed me with this fear and this doubt, and I was just completely hopeless. I was just thinking, why? Why is this happening? I just accepted Christ. I just proclaimed him in baptism. Life should be perfect. Like, why is this happening? It shouldn't be happening. This fear and anxiety would continue to impact me for the next 4 years of my life, and it impacted my family too. I would change my eating habits. I was so sick to the point that I wouldn't eat. It wasn't that I was anorexic, it was just that I was so nervous, I literally could not consume food. My schedule of going out or staying in based off of this fear, it was controlling my life. I wouldn't do things, or I would do things I normally wouldn't do just because I was so fearful in that moment. My fear had led to doubt. My doubt led to insecurities and confusion. I had so many questions of what if, and questions of if I really was saved. I had this picture that once I was saved, everything would be fine, and it wasn't. What is wrong with me? What am I not doing right? Was it all just a good, happy feeling? Or maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I wasn't doing it right. Maybe I wasn't praying enough. Maybe I wasn't in the Word enough. Maybe I wasn't hanging out with the right people. Maybe I'm just not doing it right. So I started to think if I could find the right mixture, the right balance of praying, of being in the Bible, of serving, of hanging out with the right people or not hanging out with these certain people, if I just found the right fixture, the right formula, then I could fix everything. I could put it back into place, I could bring order to my life again, and everything would be just fine. And that's where the power struggle for control of my life began. I never walked away from my faith. It just kind of brought more questions into my life. And throughout that time, I had a great youth group. I had a church family that came alongside me and just walked with me through it all. And it was all really encouraging, and they helped me to become confident in my salvation. But really, there was one individual that walked with me through it all and really came alongside me and encouraged me in it. And I ended up marrying that man. He was my dream man. And we got married, and we lived happily ever after. Or that's how I thought it was supposed to go. But soon after we got married, I found out that marriage is not for the faint of heart. And my marriage was not the fairy tale that little girls' dreams are made of. For me, I found new fears, new worries, more insecurities, and just more confusion. And it was like, the more I tried to control it, the more I tried to take the pieces and place them all together and just fix it. The more I tried to fix it, the more I tried to control it, the more out of control it got. And I just couldn't understand why. And so years went by, years of pain, years of heartache, of struggle, and of disappointment. And at one point, I had to decide, what did it look like in my life to be obedient to God? For me, that meant I had to choose. I had to choose following after my husband, who was no longer walking with the Lord, who had turned from God completely, or I was to choose and follow God. And so I chose God. And I knew I was making the right choice. I knew I was being obedient, but it was definitely the lowest point in my life. I had tried so hard. I had done everything I knew I could, and I tried, and I lost everything. And all I could think of was, now what? I mean, I already knew I was a broken person. I had faults, I had failures. I already knew that I was fearful, that I was insecure. I already knew all of this, but now I was a failure. Now I was divorced. I had no self-worth at that point. And I couldn't understand how God could possibly use me now. How could He use such a broken person? But God, the two most powerful, encouraging, and hopeful words in my life. But God. You see it throughout the Bible, but for me it was, but God and His righteousness and His mercy and His grace. He showed me that He not only redeemed people, but He redeemed their stories. And He could redeem my story. If you could picture with me, what I saw is, I saw this broken little girl on the floor crying, just a hot mess. And here comes God, the Heavenly Father, coming and scooping me up in His arms and sitting me on His lap and just saying, trust me. Trust me. And He just laid it all out for me. Do you see at this point in time when you were most fearful that I was with you? Do you see that you were scared? I was with you. Do you see that when you didn't have, I provided? Did you see that in this moment, I kept you safe? Do you see that I was with you through it all? I never left you. I carried you through it. Do you trust me now? And it was all I could do, to just surrender it all. And it was the most peaceful and the most relaxing feeling. The relief, the rest that I had in that moment, I had not felt in years. He could use me. And fast forward now to here I am now telling my story and sharing what I've been through. And I am here to proclaim that I am only here because Jesus is the one. He is the one that has healed me. He's the one that has restored me. He's the one that can use my story. Because of that, now I have the ability and the privilege of being able to lead and serve in worship. I now have the privilege and honor to be able to walk alongside young ladies and other women and encourage them in their walk and point them towards Christ. My hope and encouragement in sharing this story is that you'll see that God can use you and your story too. Yeah, I still have struggles. I am far from being perfect. I still struggle with taking over control of my life. I want things to go my way. I want it to go in my timing. I still have fears and doubts. I still have insecurities. And it's easier for me now to take it to Him, to run to Him, rather than run from Him. So my story is that Jesus is the one who redeems, and I hope that wherever you are at right now, with all of what's happening, all the craziness in the world, be encouraged. There is still a God who is in control and loves you like He loves me. Lean on Him and His understanding, and know that God's got this.